All please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and we always start our meeting with also an acknowledgement that the land on which we gather is the territory of the Ottawa and Chippewa peoples who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. Thank you for your strength and resilience in protecting this land and inspiring us to uphold our responsibilities to do the same. With that, we'll start our meeting, and I wanted to, before we got into this, suggest that because many people are here to discuss and talk about the ceasefire resolution, that we will move that above the old business. So we will do the proclamation that we have, the consent calendar, and then we will move that up unless there are any objections from the commission. Seeing none, we'll make that change to the agenda, please. Okay, and now I'll hand it over to Sarah for roll call.
Commissioner Stanley?
Here.
Commissioner Anderson?
Here.
Commissioner Treadwell?
Here.
Commissioner Shaw?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson?
Present.
Mayor?
Here. Okay, and we will actually be starting out this meeting with a proclamation for Equal Pay Day. If I can have Dr. Cindy Hull join me at the podium. Right there. And for those who don't know, because we've done this proclamation in the past, I am also involved with the American Association of University Women, who is we're presenting this to today. We did miss Equal Pay Day on March 6th because it has actually moved up about a week and a half, so there's some good news there, but we still have a reason to read this proclamation, so there's still work to be done. So with that, I will read, more than 50 years after the passage of the Equal Pay Act of 1963, women, especially minority women, continue to suffer the consequences of unequal pay. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, women working full-time year-round in 2023 typically earned 86% of what men earned, indicating little change or progress in pay equity, with those in Michigan only earning 76% of their male coworkers in 2023, the 8th worst in the country. In 2009, the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act was signed into law, which gives back to employees their day in court to challenge a pay gap. Now we must pass the Paycheck Fairness Act, which would amend the Equal Pay Act by closing loopholes and improving the law's effectiveness. According to one estimate, college-educated women working full-time earn nearly $500,000 less than their male peers do over the course of a lifetime. A lifetime of lower pay means women have less income to save for retirement and less income counted in Social Security or pension benefit formulas. Current research indicates that 64% of mothers are primary breadwinners in their households, making equal pay critical to families' economic security. Fair pay strengthens the security of families today and eases future retirement costs while enhancing the American economy. These equity policies can be implemented simply and without undue costs or hardships in both the public and private sectors. In light of this, I, Amy Shamrow, Mayor of the City of Traverse City, do hereby proclaim Wednesday, March 6, 2024 as Equal Pay Day, the symbolic day in 2024 when the wages paid to American women, on average, catch up to the wages paid to men from the previous year. I urge the citizens of Traverse City to recognize the full value of women's skills and significant contributions to the labor force, and further encourage businesses to conduct an internal pay evaluation to ensure women are being paid fairly. You can say a sentence or two. You're very knowledgeable. Pardon me? You can say a sentence or two. Very knowledgeable,
Yeah.
I know.
I really didn't have anything planned to add to that. But this is something that's important to the American Association of University Women organization throughout the United States. And we worked very hard to try to help women who are looking and trying to get educations. We get scholarships every year for young people and students in the 5-county area. And we are involved in activities that help to promote. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy. Okay, now I'll turn to the city manager. Any announcements?
Thank you, Mayor Shamrow. I just have one announcement for the benefit of the
City Commission. Last Friday, the DDA postponed taking action on the Moving Downtown Forward plan, so that has been postponed to their April meeting.
Thank you. And announcements from the city clerk.
I have several. Meetings scheduled for this week are the Planning Commission will meet Tuesday, March 19th at 6 p.m. in the chambers. The Master Plan Leadership Team will meet Wednesday, March 20th at 3:30 in the training room. The Arts Commission will meet Wednesday, March 20th at 3:30 in the committee room also. The Brown Bridge Advisory Committee will meet on Thursday, March 21st at 5:15 in the training room. Some community updates. As we are all aware, the MDOT project began on March 10th. As MDOT communicates with the city, updates are placed on the city's website and in our weekly newsletter, the Bay Brief, as much as possible. Reconstruction of the Union and 8th Street intersection will begin April 1st. Although this portion of 8th is not part of the MDOT detour, we expect traffic delays. Vehicular, bicycle, and pedestrian detour maps are available on the city's website. And leaf and brush pickup will begin April 8th, with the city crew starting on the west side of the street moving east. And I would like to remind commissioners, staff, and members of the public to speak into the microphones so those watching at home and the recording of this meeting is easily heard. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll just keep it with you over there, Sarah. And can you do the consent calendar, please?
Yes, I can. The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items. Just a second, my computer went wonky on me. Together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for individual consideration by the commission. And such requests will be automatically respected. If an item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted in parentheses on the agenda is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. 1, consideration of approving the minutes of March 4th, 2024 meeting of the City Commission. Approval recommended. 2, consideration of declaring the 2013 Ram 5500 surplus so it may be sold at auction once the replacement arrives, and consideration of authorizing a purchase order for a 2028 Ford F-550 aerial bucket truck, which is a scheduled purchase. Approval recommended. Consideration of authorizing a confirming purchase order for unleaded fuel for city operational use. Approval recommended. 4, consideration of authorizing an amendment to the agreement for lighting to be installed in the pedestrian railing in connection with the South Union Street Bridge Rehabilitation Project. Approval recommended. 5, consideration of authorizing an amendment to the agreement with the State of Michigan for it to provide full reimbursement in connection with the COVID in the wastewater analysis project, and consideration of authorizing an amendment to the related consultant agreement to provide all sample collection, lab analysis, lab supplies, and reporting service to meet the grant requirements for the period of August 1st, 2024 through September 30th, 2024. Approval recommended. 6, consideration of adopting a procurement card policy. Approval recommended. 7, consideration of waiving the competitive bidding process for the construction of the Tart Bay Front Improvement and Extension Project to occur concurrently with the ongoing Grandview Parkway construction. Approval recommended. 8, consideration of introducing an ordinance amendment which would rezone the property commonly known as 412 Webster from R2 Mixed Density District to D2 Development District as requested by the property owner and recommended by the City Planning Commission. Introduction and schedule for possible enactment on April 1st, 2024. 9, consideration of clarifying the motion previously adopted, authorizing the agreement with Pullman SST for the parking structure restoration to specifically articulate the 10% contingency, which is a housekeeping matter. Approval recommended.
Thank you. Would any commissioner like an item pulled from the consent calendar? Yes, Ms.
I'd like to pull number 7 and number 8, please.
Okay. 7 and 8. Any others? Would anybody from the public like to pull any items from the consent calendar? Seeing none, take a motion for the amended consent calendar.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar as amended.
Commissioner Stanley? Mayor Pro Tem? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. So we'll move to item number 7. This is the waiving of the competitive bidding process on the Tart Trail. Did you have some questions about this, Commissioner
I
Anderson?
do, thank you. I noticed in the packet that Progressive AE is quoted as anticipating big cost savings from the use of Elmer's for both projects, the Tart Trail and the street project. And I just wondered, in terms of order of magnitude, are we talking
1,000, 10,000, 100,000? How large a savings might we expect? And I also wondered, I know that there is a RAP grant, and the city is putting in $450,000 to match that grant. I wondered about the TART organization's contribution to that.
Sure, and if you don't mind, City Manager, I see people lined up already to answer, so I will hand it over the floor to the representatives here.
Good evening. I'm Ann Pagano, City Engineer. I think I can answer both your questions, but I've got backup for me here if I can. Mobilization was one of the large items that we think we would have a good cost savings for, and that usually is about 10% of the overall construction estimate, which right now is about $900,000, so it is significant. And the second question was how much was coming from TART? Was that the question?
Yes. What was their share of the funding?
121,000 approximately.
Okay. So, so the city's share would be somewhat less than 450,000, which would be half of the overall cost?
So the 900,000 in there did not include the contingencies, would be the, just in case anything goes wrong during construction, and the construction management, which could be another 10%-ish on top of that. So I think we are about where we were with the original estimate, which was 1.2 million. So I think the city's portion would still be around 420,000 is what it was originally.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Sure. Were there any other questions on this? Would anybody like to make a motion?
I move that we accept the proposal for a competitive bid waiver on the TART Bayfront Improvement and Extension Project.
Support.
Real quick, and authorize the staff to move forward with negotiations with Team Elmers?
Oh, yes.
Perfect. Great. Okay, so I had Commissioner Anderson made the motion and Commissioner Shaw second. Okay. I saw a finger pointing, so there we go. In a good way for once. All right, so we have a motion. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nope. We asked for public comment. I can give you a second. Please go ahead, Mr. Buckholter.
We ask that you state your name and address, indicate if you are a city resident, non-city resident, and/or city business owner. We have a 3-minute time allotment per speaker. When your time has elapsed, the timer will beep. And finally, we request that all language be respectful to all parties.
Rick Buckholder, 932 Kelly Street. I'm a Traverse City resident. In my opinion, this whole process and project's been an abomination. I mean, the city spent nearly a third of a decade cleaning up the waterfront, and a part of that was to create the green space between the parkway and the edge of the beach. Then came the existing TART trail, and I use it 6 days a week, and it's a good thing. But if you double the width of it by making it 16 feet wide and the very narrow space by Clinch Park Beach and the very narrow space by the volleyball beach, you're going to lose the charm of the area. There's going to be no place for people to play Frisbee or whatever. And I was especially pretty much disturbed by the lack of public input on this, even though there was supposedly 4 sessions. And we have 15,000 people here and there, and you better have a significant number of people to do a project of this size. Our parks, and especially our parks and our bayfront, are one of the most important things of making this a quality place to live. We lost what was originally intended for Clinch Park. Union Street Dam Park's going to be eviscerated sometime this spring. And we lost Senior Center Park when they clear-cut most of the park last fall. I mean, an Indian Woods Park, they asked to save their merry-go-round, and they got rid of it anyway. You're going to put a sidewalk in Ashton Park. I mean, why? Why are you doing this? But this is the premier park that we have. It is an open space, and what was said was there's 1 million people use it a year, and that's baloney. I use it 6 days a week, and there is no 1 million people a year that use this. And once you do this, you can't take it back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buckholter. Any other public comment? Seeing none, back to the commission. We'll revote since we opened up public comment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, motion passes. Item number 8, also Ms. Anderson, please go ahead.
Yes, my question had to do with the status of the renovation plans for the property. I understood, I believe, from Planning Commission discussions that the owners may now be considering a mixed-use building that would include retail and/or commercial or office space as opposed to all residential. And I just wondered if we could get confirmation on that.
Good evening, Sean Winter, City Planning Director. The short answer is yes, they're still working on their pro forma to figure out how they can financially save the building. That may, if you recall from the meeting where the applicant, who is here today, may speak on that, spoke to the Planning Commission. They are exploring a potential office component as a way to draw maybe commercial lease revenue to help pay for the renovations that's going to require. And I think, as I understand it, that would be on the top 2 floors if, in fact, it does include a commercial component.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Winter.
Okay, any further questions on this? Go ahead, Mitch.
Yes, just as somebody that serves on the Planning Commission, proposals for rezoning this property had been scheduled a couple times before finally coming before us. I am glad that it, rather than a conditional rezoning or a site plan approval tied to a specific redevelopment of that building or that property, it is a more straightforward zoning that allows both TCAPs and or the developer a little more flexibility. I mean, they currently have an agreement that they are working within the shell of the building, but speaking from my own planning and zoning experience, the fact that we are making it a clear change of one zoning classification to another allows them the flexibility without specifying it has to be this percentage of commercial, this percentage of residential, and what they do to make that work with saving that building works.
Thank you, Mr. Treadwell. Any other comments? I would take a motion. Go ahead.
I move that the amendment to the Traverse City Code of Ordinances, Appendix 1, zoning map changes, which would rezone the property commonly known as 412 Webster from R2 Mixed Density District to D2 Development District, as recommended by the Planning Commission, be introduced and scheduled for possible enactment on April 1st, 2024.
A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. All right, any further comment on this item? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And with that, we will now move to what was previously new business 2. We will have moved that above old business, so we will be addressing the resolution in support of a ceasefire in Gaza and Israel. Just to give some quick background on this, resolutions on issues outside of our area don't come to us very often. This has followed the process of going through the Human Rights Commission, which is one of the reasons why it exists. It's here to help us work through social and societal issues, as well as both here in our backyard and in any sphere, actually, and help us as citizens have some input from other citizens. It also it's composed of city residents, and a couple of seats are held for county, so it is a broader voice for our region. And this did start in the process when a resolution was proposed to the commission, and through some work by the chair, Jen Loop, and her board, they worked on and came up with this resolution that's before us today. So I'll have Ms. Loop join us at the podium here and just give a little bit more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Shamrow. Yes, so we had quite a few residents, concerned citizens in front of us. We had some emails that were presented. And so what we did was look into, there are over 70, probably more, cities in the country that have passed these resolutions. And so I looked into Lansing, Detroit, Ann Arbor, similar regions, and came up with something that we thought would be representative of Traverse City. When there's an opportunity to make a statement about human rights, I think that's good to do. And yes, the Human Rights Commission is there to kind of review. It passed It passed overwhelmingly with us, and so we wanted to bring it to you.
Thank you, Ms. Loop. And also, much like Ms. Loop and the Human Rights Commission, before this draft, even when the initial one came through, I heard from members of the city, of our community, who have ties to Palestinian families, Israeli families, Jewish families, and others who are just concerned. I know that sometimes it can seem like broader issues aren't local, but from the responses I think we've seen at the Human Rights Commission and that I know I've heard, and I'm sure others have, Traverse City is I think sometimes we look around and we see a certain type of city, but there's a lot more representation here than we think, I would say sometimes, and we have definitely heard from people on this issue as well. So, did you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, that's what I was just
about
going to open it to. Any questions? Go ahead, Michelle.
I know that some people on this commission and in the public may wonder why we're spending our time on something that we have no purview over. The word purview means scope of influence. And while this commission has no legislative purview, it is a focus of the concerns of city residents, and that focus, joined with others like the 8 other cities in Michigan who have signed this resolution, we do have influence. And speaking up influences. Otherwise, why would anybody show up for public comment? This resolution is all about the protection of human life, the promotion of dialogue and negotiation rather than violence to resolve conflicts, and conflicts no matter where they are. The only way humans have ever triumphed over conflicts is by getting to know one another, finding common ground, and then negotiating. There's a lot of incivility out there, not to mention Islamophobia, anti-Arab speech and actions, and anti-Semitism. Signing this resolution communicates that Traverse City is a safe and welcoming place for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. Very well thought out. Any other comments from the commission at this point? Or I would actually take a motion. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here. Go ahead, Commissioner Anderson.
I am going to abstain from voting on this resolution. First, let me thank the Human Rights Commission and each of you here tonight for your commitment to this cause. I also have very strong personal opinions about an Israel-Gaza ceasefire, about hostage return, about humanitarian aid. I cannot see that my vote tonight is going to save a single life or ease a child's suffering. I swore to serve the citizens of Traverse City faithfully and impartially, and I believe this resolution is outside the scope of responsibilities for which I was elected. For those who so energetically support the resolution, I urge you to join me by devoting similar time and energy to humanitarian aid through reputable charities that are already active in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Could we have a motion? Go ahead, Commissioner Shaw.
I move that the City Commission support the resolution of ceasefire in Gaza and Israel.
Support.
Thank you. We'll do that for Shaw and Stanley. Sorry, you got the last one. So with the motion on the table, any further questions or any comments from our commissioners, please?
Just bring attention to the whereas, so that it's understood why I support this, that the way this is worded is basically to say that this is the type of community that we want to stand for, that doesn't stand by Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, anti-Palestinian, and anti-Israeli bigotry, and that there is direct impacts on our culturally diverse community in Traverse City.
Thank you. Commissioner Stanley, you had also had your hand up.
I appreciate Mayor Pro Tem's statements, and I want to acknowledge everyone who took the time to come here this evening about this topic. We have received a significant amount of community communication, feedback, and dialogue on a resolution for a ceasefire. In recent days, we've also received a smattering, just a handful of people reaching out to us and telling us essentially to stay in our lane, focus on fixing streets, focus on the things that are, as Commissioner Shaw put it, within our purview. And I would say that given the fact that this impacts directly so many people who live and work and call this community our a home, this is within our purview to acknowledge you, to see you, to stand up for you, to address you and say, this may not, will this change one thing at any level internationally? Perhaps not, but we are doing and putting our words into action here locally in the way that we have been asked to do so, in the way that's in front of us to be able to take some action to say that you are being heard, you are not invisible, you are important, your calls for peace are not falling on deaf ears. And so I want to thank everyone who has taken the time to communicate with us. I want to acknowledge all the work that went into this resolution. Is it perfect? Certainly no words are perfect. Is it going to save a single life? I doubt it. Will it cease the human suffering? Absolutely not. And also, it is the right thing to do. And that is why I will be voting yes.
Excuse me. While I appreciate that Commissioner Stanley gave a very impassioned, this is a topic that has a lot of emotion behind it, so we're going to ask that people just be, much like our instruction at the first public comment and in general, that we just allow people to speak and encourage. It's not that we don't applaud people or that we don't support each other, and you can reference people in kind and supportive ways. But especially with items like this, we don't want any person in the room to feel like they can't speak. So I'll ask if there's any further comment from the commission. Seeing none, we will now open it up for public comment. So please, everyone, if there's quite a few of you who want to, can I have a quick show of hands of people who'd like to make public comment? If you don't mind starting to line up, just so that we can keep the comments going and make sure I don't accidentally close down public comment and realize that there's somebody waiting. So please feel free to approach the podium. Again, it's a 3-minute time allotment, and everyone's please welcome to share your thoughts. And Sarah, if you want to just real quick remind people what you'd like from them, just because I know.
Okay, just as a reminder, we ask that you state your name and address, indicate if you are a city resident, non-city resident, and/or city business owner. We have the 3-minute time allotment per speaker. When your time is elapsed, the timer will beep. And finally, we request that all language be respectful to all parties.
Thank you very much. You can start out now.
Thank you. My name is Tara Ward. I live at 425 East State Street. I'm a city resident. And I just want to encourage the City Commission to vote for the ceasefire resolution, because I feel that it is a way that we can show that we believe in peace and nonviolence and different ways of solving problems. Even though it might not change things internationally, we're doing what we can do on our local level. So I appreciate support for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Gina Aranki. I live at 10002 East Bingham Road, Traverse City. I'm here to speak in favor of the resolution before you tonight, to add my voice to the desire for a different world, a world in which children and women and men are not decimated by bombs and snipers and tanks that America provides to governments and despots and dictators to be used against ordinary people. This is how enemies are created, not deterred, not subdued. Surely civilization can do better than that. And to those who say that this is not the purview of local government, you addressed that already, but I ask you to consider what the billions in military aid to Israel and other countries to carpet bomb Palestinian lives and families and homes into dust might have been used for had we the will. Education, healthcare, building and rebuilding rather than destroying. Local actions like this, at the very least, send the message to our state and federal officials that we stand for something different than their militaristic, anti-human, anti-planet policies represent. I work in an organization that's dedicated to protecting children from abuse and neglect, and war, in my estimation, is the worst form of child abuse. I urge you to be part of the chorus of humanity saying no to the perpetual war industry. Silence is complicity, ceasefire, peace, and justice for Palestinians and everyone. Now, thank you.
Again, please, everyone, I'm sorry, I know this is an issue with a lot of supporters and others in the room, but we ask that you be respectful, please.
Hi, my name's Christian Gagan. I'm a citizen resident. I live at 645 Bay Hill Drive. I own a business with my wife, Hexen Bell, in town. I originally wanted to say something along the lines of I wish the language in the resolution was a little more direct and held responsible the parties, at least in this government, who are responsible for everything going on. But then I was struck by something that Commissioner Anderson said. I want to thank Commissioner Stanley for their comment as well. I thought that was really well appreciated. I'm Palestinian, a member of this community. I've actually lived here longer than any other place I've lived. And we talk about diversity in this community a lot, and I have felt almost none of that. I have gotten harassment, abuse, and then quite recently death threats in this community from an Israeli national for simply being Palestinian. This does not just affect people overseas. This affects people like me. My grandmother is older than the state of Israel, but when she was kicked out of her home, I can't go back there. They won't let me go through. When my cousins try to go through, they send us back after 8 hours of harassment. This resolution might not affect anything over there, but it sends a message not only to the people in this community, to people like me who have been othered, but to our government in the state, to our federal government, that we are taking a stand against one of the most inhumane disasters I've ever seen in my entire life. They have just raided another hospital, and journalists were kidnapped. We pushed for this resolution in our group TC Solidarity months ago, 10,000 lives ago, before aid was airdropped onto people, and then they were killed for it. I thought I was making a mistake when I saw that there have been 7 massacres of people trying to get aid from this country. This is not just something that doesn't fall under our purview. This is a human issue of which we have not seen the likes of and which has not been streamed in any other way. To not call it out, I think, is an act of cowardice. It's morally reprehensible, and it affects people like me who continue to feel unsafe in this community repeatedly. Thank you.
Christian.
Hi, my name is Reverend Jordan Starkenberg. Address 1093 Smith Road, East Bay Township. I'm a pastor at the Presbyterian Church of Traverse City. I'm offering some opening remarks on behalf of a group of us who will speak tonight from our shared identity, specifically as Christians. First, we want to express gratitude for all those who have been working hard to push for a ceasefire resolution to be brought to the City Council, especially lifting the voices of TC Solidarity, Mideast Just Peace, and countless citizens who have already raised their voices locally for a call to end this violence. We are also grateful to the Human Rights Commission for drafting and adopting the resolution to bring to City Commission. Today, we have come together to urge the Traverse City Commission to pass a courageous and honest resolution that speaks to the morality of humankind, one that holds no one life or one people or one religion above any other, one that does not uphold retribution as a solution, but uplifts that the way of peace is made by those who choose to be in principled struggle together. We cannot bomb our way to peace. Or to quote the Christian peace activist A.J. Musta, there is no way to peace. Peace is the way. We must remember that the violence happening today in Palestine and Israel is rooted in a much longer history that began long before October 7. And as Christians, we have gathered tonight to confess the way our spiritual tradition has both seeded and accelerated the violence we are witnessing. We stand here to call for a permanent ceasefire, to publicly testify that our faith calls us to acknowledge that there is not a military solution. Tonight we have about 30 or so of us who are here to call for this resolution as Christians for ceasefire, and you will hear from about 9 of us collectively in just a moment. We are also in solidarity with many more in this community who are here tonight to stand in solidarity with Palestinians who are facing the genocide of their people. So today we urge you to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire and an end to any further military aid to the State of Israel. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Schulte, and I'm a resident at 11747 Willow Point Drive, Traverse City. We want to thank you for your listening ear and for your voice that is more powerful than you know. Our plea is for a ceasefire is grounded in the common humanity and shared fate of Israelis and Palestinians. Our primary concern is to end the war on Gaza because a permanent ceasefire will protect millions of innocent people. A ceasefire will save lives, and it is the first step needed in our work to end occupation of Palestine. A permanent ceasefire is the beginning of a journey toward lasting peace between Palestinians and Israelis, where everyone can live with freedom, justice, and equality. What does a call for a permanent ceasefire mean? We mean ending the Israeli government's ongoing genocide and siege in Gaza. Let all captives taken by Hamas and let all Palestinian captives taken by Israel be returned now. As Jesus said, set the captives free. Use diplomacy, not more escalation toward further war, violence, and death. Advocating for a peaceful diplomatic solution that addresses the root of causes of occupation and apartheid that have led to the current nightmare and guarantees freedom, justice, and equality for all Palestinians and Israelis. Stopping far-right white supremacists and Christian nationalists who use this moment to incite violence against our Muslim and Jewish neighbors. We urge you to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire and an end to any further military aid to the State of Israel. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Wellington, 676 Madeira Drive, Traverse City. The call for ceasefire is of the utmost urgency. The Gaza Strip is 25 miles long and 7 miles wide. That's the length of driving onto the Leelanau Peninsula from Graylickville to Northport and from Sutton's Bay west to Duck Lake, just south of Leland. Millions of Palestinians have been displaced by Israel since the horrific day of October 7th and have been forcefully driven south to Rafah, where they have been told there is safety. For comparison, that means the displacement of 1.2 million Palestinian people, twice the population of Detroit, have gathered at the border of Traverse City. Can you imagine twice the population of Detroit gathered on Highway 72 with no food, clean water, housing, schools, latrines, etc., for the past 5 months? Plus, the military continues to attack them where they have been told it would be safe. More than 30,000 people have been killed in Gaza. 13,000, we are told, are children. 13,000. Whole family trees have been wiped off the nation's registers. Millions are displaced. The healthcare system has collapsed, as we know. Forced starvation is rapidly unfolding. The situation, I think, is beyond dire. I know this is a complicated situation, but we want to honor and acknowledge that you are not alone in these feelings. We urge you to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire, even if this doesn't go anywhere, as we've said. Will lives be saved by this? Maybe, but maybe not. We commend you for this declaration and support you. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for your attention tonight. My name is Joan Shilla. I live at 2124 Twin Eagles Drive, Traverse City. We'll continue with a quote to give one example of just how dire this situation is. It is from Jason Lee, Save the Children's Country Director for the Occupied Palestinian Territory quoted in January. For every day without a definitive ceasefire, 100 children on average have been killed. There can never be justification for killing our children. The situation in Gaza is monstrous and a blight on our common humanity. Children have been paying the price for a conflict they have no part in. They are terrified, hurt, maimed, displaced. Despite the number of children killed and maimed, the International Committee has failed to act again and again. One grave violation committed against children is one too many. For the last 3 months, children in Gaza have faced grave violations every day, while conditions to provide them with the humanitarian assistance they need are simply not there. All parties must agree to a definitive ceasefire now. Additionally, if children survive this unjust war, they will live with the consequences of violence. I am an infant and early childhood mental health mentor in this community. I've worked with many, many young children and their families who have experienced violence. Many people believe that children in early months and years who experience violence will forget what happens. Instead, we know that violence impacts children and families throughout their entire life. It affects their very growth and development, physically, emotionally, cognitively, ultimately impacting their ability to manage and learn in school, and ultimately impacts their ability to become contributing members of society as adults. We also know that violence in early years has a direct link to increased later violence. Taking no action increases the likelihood of the next generation of violence. We urge you to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire and an end to any further military aid to the State of Israel. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Paul Sherill. I reside at 2124 Twin Eagles Drive, Traverse City. I'm a longtime member and elder at the Presbyterian Church of Traverse City. Since October 7, over 13,000 children, Palestine children, have been killed. Over 17,000 children, Palestine children, are orphaned, no parents. As Christians for Ceasefire, we want to speak directly about the role of our Christian tradition in this violence. Christian Zionism is the belief that establishing the State of Israel as a Jewish state will bring about Jesus' second coming and the end of the world. At that time, Christians will reach salvation, and non-Christians, including Jews and Muslims, will be annihilated. In this misguided Christian doctrine about the end of the world, the Jewish people are used as pawns. This is anti-Semitism. It's important to know that Christian Zionism is older than Jewish Zionism and was founded by British theologians and politicians who signed the Balfour Declaration in 1917, who were looking to rid their own English United Kingdom nation, to rid them of Jewish people. Christian Zionism is the foreign policy of Christian nationalism. They want America to be for Christians and Israel for the Jews. At the same time, Christian Zionism is not a fringe ideology. It is, in fact, a dominant ideology of the Christian church in America. We who are identified as Christians are implicated in this worldview, so we must speak out. We call especially upon city commissioners to ask themselves, is this the legacy of our people? Will we let this be what happens in our name? As so many Jewish people around the world have been powerfully speaking and praying, no, not in our name, we call upon Christians and all of us as American taxpayers to also say, no, not in our name. We urge you to call for an immediate, permanent ceasefire and an end to any further military aid to the State of Israel. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Forster. I'm a non-city resident. I also am a former board member of the City of Traverse City's Human Rights Commission, and I want to thank my former colleagues for their excellent work on this resolution. In addition to Christian Zionism, we want you to ensure that you know about CUFI, Christians United for Israel. CUFI is the largest pro-Israel lobby in the U.S. They claim over 10 million members. For perspective, that is bigger than the entire Jewish population of the U.S. There are 10 times the number of Christian Zionists than there are Jewish Zionists. CUFI is led by John Hagee, a Texas megachurch pastor whose anti-Semitic remarks, including that the Holocaust was part of God's plan to create the state of Israel, and his vast power is behind the effort to organize Christians to come to Washington, D.C. to advocate for Israel's genocide. This organization funds Israeli settlements that further displaces Palestinian people, and they use laws protecting churches to hide how much money they actually give. The Israeli government has named Christian Zionists as the backbone of Israel support despite its anti-Semitic theology. That tells you how politically powerful they actually are. Interrupting this hateful ideology and the power it is amassing is not only imperative for preserving Palestinian life, it is connected to the broader fight against Christian nationalism, which means it is also connected to protecting voting rights, protecting Black and brown and indigenous people, people in the LGBTQ plus community, and more. All things that we know this city stands for. We must be part of interrupting this. We urge you to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire and an end to any further military aid to the state of Israel. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. My name is Gail L Fe, and I live in Ganan, Michigan. We say explicitly, if it is not clear by now, that we oppose anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, and we are grateful that language is included in this draft resolution. At the same time, we do not hold that criticizing a nation state, the state of Israel, for example, is the same thing as demonstrating hatred of Jewish people. Just as there are thousands of anti-Zionist Jews calling for a ceasefire today, there is a legacy of Jewish people that extends back to the founding of the state of Israel, who have said, creating a religious ethno-state does not make Jews safer. It in fact makes Jewish people more unsafe to live anywhere else in the world. Many American Jews reacted strongly against President Biden's comments that, quote, no Jew in the world would be safe without Israel, because it implies that their own country, this country, cannot keep them safe as Jewish people. As Christians, our spiritual tradition teaches us that when one of us suffers, we all suffer. When one of us rejoices, we all rejoice. We believe that the safety and self-determination of Jewish people is inextricably connected to the safety and self-determination of the Palestinian people, and to all of our safety and self-determination. We strongly denounce the rise of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia that is showing up in our nation right now, and we trust that an end to this hatred is rooted in an end to colonization and racism. Therefore, we urge you to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire and an end to any further military aid to the state of Israel. Thank you very much.
My name is Ray Starkenberg, 1093 Smith Road, Traverse City. Thank you so much for taking your time for this important topic. This resolution as drafted is one important action, and it is a bare minimum that our city can do to take a stand for human dignity and seek to end complicity in this devastation. One reality that we must face is that our tax dollars are funding Israel's bombardment of Palestine. We call for even stronger language in this resolution to push our elected leaders at the federal level to use every power they have to stop the unfolding genocide. In 1 year, we send $3.8 billion to Israel. 250,396 of that comes from Traverse City. We could be using that money to fund 29 public housing units, health care for 87 children with low-income families, 2 elementary school teachers, 712 households with solar energy. Please make this demand to our federal leaders on behalf of all of us. We have been calling, writing, singing, praying. You can help us amplify our voices and show them that Traverse City does not stand this violence, that Traverse City does not stand for human rights violations and war crimes, that Traverse City does not stand for whole family trees being wiped off the registers in Palestine, that Traverse City does not and will not stand silently by and allow this genocide to keep unfolding. Please urge our federal leaders to do the same by including language in the resolution you passed today that calls for an end to further military aid to the state of Israel. We urge you to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire and an end to the funding of this genocide. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Reverend Lucy Wachter-Webb, and I'm a resident of Leelanau County, a local spiritual leader, and also a business owner here in Traverse City over on 8th Street. The time to act is now, and we have been so inspired by our Palestinian and Jewish and Arab and Muslim allies who have been in the streets for months, putting their bodies on the front lines to protest our government's waging war in their name, in our name. We believe that our Jewish and Muslim and Arab neighbors and friends deserve safety and security wherever they live, and that Islamophobia and anti-Semitism have no place in our communities. And our commitment to peacemaking compels us not only to demand a ceasefire, but to also root out violent theologies that promote anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, colonization, and white supremacy. We unequivocally reject all forms of hate and violence and offer a theology based on liberation, one that is centered in nonviolence and the protection of all life. We are moved toward liberation because it is the good news Jesus lived. It was the center of his ministry. And as Christians, we often lift up the courageous witness of people like Dietrich Bonhoeffer or Corrie ten Boom, Christians who resisted Nazi Germany's genocidal acts. But the reality is 6 million Jewish people were killed because of the silence of far too many Christian people, Christian Germans, including Christian white women, who watched all of these things unfold before them in their community and chose not to speak up. And so we invite you to imagine what is in your purview. Where might you use your voice? Where might you be courageous and speak up? And as you've heard all of us ask tonight, we urge you to call not only for an immediate and a permanent ceasefire, but also to consider adding an amendment to the resolution that's before you tonight to also include urging the federal leaders that you will send this to, President Biden and other congressional leaders, that we do not support the continued funding of this genocide. To also call for an end to funding the Israeli military, and to include that in the language that you pass tonight when you pass this resolution. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Wachter. I reside at 2029 Croper Road, Traverse City, Michigan. I'd like to review a little fairly recent history, actually, for the Commission. On July 25th, 2017, a group of 7 Traverse City residents, all members of Veterans for Peace, Chapter 50, signed a letter of intent to make Traverse City an international city of peace. That document was subsequently endorsed by the Traverse City Human Rights Commission as well as the Traverse City Commissioners. So we are now an international city of peace. For those who may not think that this is in our purview, I think that probably clearly falls within the bailiwick of taking actions of working and speaking for peace. I'd like to read just a few brief excerpts of a letter signed by Richard I. Lewis, the mayor of Traverse City, on September 15th, 2022. True peace entails much more than laying down arms. It requires the building of societies where all members feel they can flourish. It involves creating a world in which people are treated equally, regardless of their race. And we in Traverse City, which is a member of the International Cities of Peace, devote ourselves to the world and community peace and encourage all of humankind to work in cooperation toward this goal. And perhaps for at least this day, carrying this day over to the next day, and the next day, and the next. And whereas we know all conflict is inherent to life, in days of strife and division in our community and in our country, let us dedicate this day to peace building, and through our continued efforts, create a culture of peace. We will think peace. We will act peace. We will be peace. Signed by the mayor on September 15th, 2022. I think it is in our purview. I think it's in your purview. And I ask you to please endorse this ceasefire resolution. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Justin Reed, 630 Cottage Drive, Apartment 1B, Traverse City, Michigan. I do agree with all these comments that have been about the ceasefire. I'm not a really religious person, but I can at least articulate enough to go ahead and say that those are constituencies, even though that they're not over on the other side of the ocean. But there is a election season coming up, and what I would say is either, there's some petition that goes on with the people who want the ceasefire, petitioning to the federal level, and petitioning out to the U.S. government in Congress. But that's all I gotta say. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Hi, Joel, Jolene, Harmony. I just moved, actually, 8th Street, so I'm closer to town now. Comfy? Sorry. I was going to write, I had something written down, but decided to speak from the heart tonight. When we first presented this ceasefire resolution, it was a three-page resolution, and it has been kind of shredded and torn down to one page. And I felt that it was extremely an extremely safe take on the ceasefire resolution. And as people before me commented, there should be harsher language criticizing the hypocrisy of our government and the hypocrisy that we work for a government that strives for peace, and yet we're causing a genocide. We're supporting a genocide, we're abetting in a genocide, and that's kind of disgusting. I also think that what's kind of disgusting is the notion to maintain calm waters here, to maintain calmity within our community where America is causing tsunamis over in different countries. We are aiding this genocide, and that's disgusting. And it should be within everyone's being to fight for oppression, fight against oppression, fight against genocide. And it's disgusting that it took this long to get here. hope that you listen to the people before me and after me when editing this ceasefire further, because I think it's important to take a stand, to have a voice. So yeah, please do that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cam. I live in TC. I want to say I'm an old Nazi fighter from Lansing to the streets of Charlottesville. And what Zionism is, it's a militarized, subsidized form of the same type of bigotry I fought against anti-Semites, an ethno-state that's committing a genocide as we speak. And I do think the proposal we put forward earlier was neutered. I do applaud y'all making this first step, but it doesn't stop here. It doesn't. Y'all need to put, we all are failing until we start stopping the death that is going on in our name, the name of us, from our tax dollars. We have to do more. We have to put pressure on federal politicians. A lot of y'all rub elbows with them from time to time. You need to do more. This is a good step. It shows people the right thing, right? It has been neutered, and like Joelle had said, it completely, I don't know, y'all took a safe space trying to, I think, come off non-anti-Semitic. As someone who has fought against anti-Semitism, put skin in the game, watched people die in the streets of Charlottesville, watched someone die, I'll tell you, this is not anti-Semitism. Standing up against Zionism is not anti-Semitism. There's a big difference between Judaism and Zionism. And we all need to do more. And until then, we're all being performative. We're all being performative. We need to make life harder for the politicians that are causing this. We need to make life harder for the people that are lobbying on behalf of AIPAC and feeding Joe Biden and countless other politicians in our government, doesn't matter Democrat or Republican. Until we stop that, this is all performative. But it's a step in the right direction. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Abby Weglars. I'm a resident at Oakdale Drive in Traverse City. And I just want to support the call for a permanent ceasefire. And I would like to also support any amendment or future resolution to also limit funding. And I didn't prepare anything, but I also wanted to add that it does sadden me to see people diminishing their own power in this room, and our actions here tonight do matter, and it does send a message to the entire world, and this is in solidarity with actions all over the state, all over the country, and all over the world. And so please don't diminish your own power and speak out against this oppression. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tess. I am a resident of Leelanau County, and I am here to share a story of a Palestinian family at the request of a local community member. Before I share, I'll offer that this story is graphic. I invite folks in the space to tend to themselves as needed for the next 3 to 6 minutes as I share and the person right after me shares. At the same time, I want to evoke what many Palestinians are asking, which is that we not look away, that we bear witness, to feel the great violence and death that is inflicted on our Palestinian kin. Please be in choice around this share. A human rights group from Where the Peace returned from Turkey the week of March 1st and provided updates from some of the Palestinian refugees they met there. Here is one of those stories. We met a Palestinian woman today who was evacuated from Gaza to Turkey with her niece because she is the only guardian that her niece has left. The woman lost her entire family after an Israeli airstrike hit her house. She had to watch her 3 children die under the house that they built years of memories in. She watched as her daughter's feet were obliterated off of her body as she screamed and begged her mother to help her. Her daughter crawled to her with no legs, full of blood, begging her mother for help.
Her daughter bled out to death in front of her. Her other children screamed under the rubble until the screams faded to silence. She says every time she closes her eyes, she hears her children scream. She says she can never sleep because every time she tries to close her eyes, those scenes rush back, and it makes me emotional even remembering her telling us the story as her hands shook. It is horrendous and hard to bear witness to this level of violence, and even just hearing the stories. And it is our work to face the unimaginable so that we can source our courage to speak up. As a mother of a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, I urge you to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire, and to also include in that ceasefire to end funding for this genocide. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jennifer Watson. I live on 15th Street. Big old ceasefire sign on the fence. Maybe you've seen it. I'm new to this community, and I do feel that it is within my purview to speak up on behalf of my friends from Palestine, here and in New York City, where I moved from. I've been asked to read another story from a refugee. This one's also kind of rough, so if you feel like you would like to take the time for yourself, please do. Again, from the human rights group that Tess referenced. This story comes from a refugee that was told there. The story begins, we met and spoke with a woman from Gaza who was evacuated with her 2 daughters in Ankara, Turkey. Her other 3 daughters were evacuated to Qatar. She used to be a nurse at Al-Shifa Hospital. I'll interrupt this to say Al-Shifa was bombed again yesterday, over 80 people martyred, journalists from Al Jazeera kidnapped. Her other 3 daughters were evacuated. When Israeli forces were heavily bombarding their neighborhood, she and her family decided to leave. There were 40 people in the house. Her 5 children, her husband, her parents, her siblings, their kids. They all stayed together just so that if they died, they would all die together. This was a common statement that was mentioned to us whenever we met families who were evacuated. They all stayed close to their loved ones so that they didn't have to bear the pain of losing one another, as dying collectively felt like a better option. They evacuated to a UN school where hundreds of people were taking refuge. It was so crowded that the adults had nowhere to sleep as the kids slept huddled on the floor. One day, in the courtyard of the school, she was bringing a bag of bread to her 13-year-old nephew. An airstrike hit as she was walking into the courtyard. She told us that she watched as he was blown up and his heart flew out of his chest. His heart landed on the floor and she watched it as it pumped its last pumps. She was injured, but all she could think of was the 40 family members that were in the school and the courtyard. She found her 5 daughters, all missing limbs. Every single daughter is under the age of 13, and they were all lying on the floor, bleeding and unconscious. She thought they were dead. At the same time, she's thinking about her husband and her parents. In what world is this acceptable? We live in an international city of peace. This is under our purview, I believe. I urge you, we urge you, to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire, and to add to this resolution to end any further military aid, and I might add any aid at all, to the state of Israel. Thank you. And the occupation and the siege. Free Palestine.
Merrick Roman, 517 3rd Street. Honorable Commissioners, I'm part of the Human Rights Commission with Chairman Loop here, and I just want to say that I'm heartened by the passion that this group has, that our commission has. I want to let you know that Chairman Loop has done a great job in finding a very good resolution for you to sign that ensures that follows the mission statement of the Human Rights Commission, where with no discriminatory practices, it values human life, and that's what is important for the ceasefire and for all conflicts going on. I want to say thank you for taking the time to consider this resolution, and we look forward to bringing all other sources of discrimination and ending discrimination practices and celebrating the great things that we have in our community. So I wholeheartedly ask you guys to please endorse this resolution. Thank you.
Hi, I'm from Traverse City. I have two names. You can call me either Simon or Simone. My name is Hebrew and Greek for listen and hear from God. That's what it means. May God bless you all for writing a ceasefire resolution. Unfortunately, it has no compassion. May I please speak clearly with everyone, not as a stranger, but as if we are old brothers and sisters, as I will speak from my heart. The resolution your human rights group made saddened me greatly, as I can tell whoever wrote it didn't care about the people of the Holocaust, the indigenous of the land we are on today, the slavery that took place, the apartheid in South Africa, or any other war or genocide that has ever existed. You chose not to acknowledge the truth, then you are not sincere whatsoever. Any resolution made in Traverse City will never get a ceasefire or justice for the people of Gaza. I do agree with you. The resolution is for the people of Traverse City to learn what is happening and ensure the people of Traverse City have humanity and speak up for injustice locally or anywhere in the world. It is a teachable moment for the people of Traverse City to learn compassion. Without compassion, how will you ever help the homeless, help the elderly, be accepting of different religions, races, cultures? How will you truly love your brothers and sisters? The resolution was not to show the people of Gaza, was to show the people of Gaza one day that the people of Traverse City spoke up for injustice in Palestine. It is to show the world the people of Traverse City are not racist, welcome all religions, and respect everyone. It is to stop hatred, racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-Christian, anti-Arab comments through education and learned compassion. A blind person can explain what is going on in Gaza and in the world, including all the hatred and killing it is causing, yet the Traverse City Human Rights has zero knowledge or willingness to speak the truth and instead decided to hide facts while pretending to want a ceasefire and save lives. While the people of Gaza have been in an open-air prison or concentration camp over 16 years, if you think you are saving the people of Gaza, you are 100% wrong. The people of Gaza are saving the world as they are opening everyone's eyes. The problem the Jewish people faced was not the Holocaust. That was the end result from the actions taken after hundreds of years of being punished and humiliated and persecuted for their religion or for just being humans, with a world filled with monsters and people who stayed quiet while they were being slaughtered. The Muslims protected the Jewish population that lived and loved with them because they knew how the Jews were being treated elsewhere and knew that was wrong. They respected each other. If a Jewish person was born in any Arabic country, he is Arabic, not Israeli. That is an Arab Jew.
Thank you.
They are real and cousins to the Muslims and Christian Arabs. This is humanity when you learn what is right and wrong and live loving and respecting everyone regardless of their race, color, religion, sexual preference. It is humanity when you speak for injustice. Your resolution basically states that you're asking for a ceasefire to allow Palestinians to be killed by lack of food, water, medicine, disease, instead of bombs, missiles, tanks, and bullets. Your resolution wants to keep the Palestinians...
Simon, thank you. We've rowed you a little over. Thank you.
And you do not care about human life and instead support the killing.
Thank you, everyone, for their public comments. Thank you, everyone, for your public comments on this. We've heard, as we've talked about, from people who are here because of their faith, because of their lived experiences, because of their compassion, and because of their beliefs. We have had a lot of comments on what is in this, what should be in this, and what people personally believe. And so what I'm going to ask right now really quickly, and then we'll have our vote. We're not putting this off, but I'd like our Deputy City Clerk to read the resolution as it is so the people at home know what we're voting on, as well as having that reminder here. If you could just do that for us really quickly, Sarah. Thank you.
Resolution in support of ceasefire in Gaza and Israel. Whereas the City of Traverse City Human Rights Commission stands committed to the notion that all human life is precious in all communities and nations of the world, regardless of national, ethnic, political, or religious affiliations, and whereas the recent and ongoing armed violence has resulted in the tragic loss of both Palestinian and Israeli lives, and whereas the Human Rights Commission recognizes Traverse City as a globally connected community enriched by a racially, ethnically, and culturally diverse community that continually stands on the side of human rights, peace, and justice, and has historically welcomed those fleeing violence and war. And whereas Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, anti-Palestinian, and anti-Israeli bigotry have risen considerably across the U.S. and the world, with direct impacts on our culturally diverse community in Traverse City, and whereas the U.S. government holds great diplomatic power that could save Palestinian and Israeli lives, and the Human Rights Commission urges officials to prioritize the preservation of life. Now therefore be it resolved by the Traverse City Human Rights Commission that the Human Rights Commission joins the calls from the growing number of cities across the world for an immediate and lasting ceasefire in Gaza and Israel, and the safe return of all innocent hostages and detainees. Be it further resolved that the Human Rights Commission condemns all forms of discrimination, including Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and anti-Palestinian and anti-Israeli bigotry. Be it further resolved that upon passage of this resolution will be sent to the Traverse City City Commission, the Office of U.S. President, the Office of U.S. Representatives, and Senators. Be it finally resolved that the Human Rights Commission expresses its immense sorrow over the loss of innocent lives and the suffering endured by the civilians in Gaza, Israel, and the broader region, and extends its deepest sympathies to Traverse City and Michigan residents who have been directly impacted by the ongoing violence in any way, including the loss of loved ones.
Thank you for reading that out loud and just for us to be back on with our resolution here. And this is deeply, as was said, we are typically a commission that votes on streets, repairs, and other issues. And this is important that we brought this up, and this is why we have a Human Rights Commission. Everyone who spoke today came up and spoke from their heart. Some people prepared statements, some clearly telling us from their heart, and that is appreciated. But this is a deeply personal issue, and we have a member who will be abstaining, and that is also part of their choice. So we will be having this vote now. It will be a roll call vote, as we've had one person signify that they will be abstaining. That's how that has to be done if it's not a unanimous all yes vote. And so with that, we will now call the vote, and I will turn it over to Sarah to do the roll call, please. We have them. Excuse me. This has come from our, Mr. Brown, this has come from our Human Rights Commission. I have heard calls that some people have even said to bring back a resolution that might address the portions of the aid or other aspects of this. That is always a possibility with the Human Rights Commission. As this came from the Human Rights Commission, we will be voting on it as it came. So can we have the roll call vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Stanley.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Abstain.
Commissioner Treadwell.
Yes.
Commissioner Shaw.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson.
Yes.
Mayor Shamrow.
Yes. So the resolution is adopted by the City Commission. As noted, the copies will be sent to our state, federal, representatives. I thank everyone for being a part of this process. As was mentioned, for some in this community, they don't think it should have happened at all. For others, it took far too long. We acknowledge both. We acknowledge that that is a process that has to be worked through, when sometimes the need, even amongst us, is for more rapid action, but this is the way we work within our government. We all have voices. As mentioned, do we all have connections to up here? We have voices that can be heard by federal and other higher representatives, and we do use those voices. We don't use them from here as an individual, though. We use them as a collective body. So this is our collective body action, and we appreciate all that all of you do in our community, and we encourage you all keeping up the dialogue with us and our Human Rights Commission and everyone else. So thank you all for coming tonight. As I mentioned, with that, the resolution passes. We will return to our agenda here with other business items, so I understand if some of you are prepared to leave, so we'll allow you a moment if you'd like to, or you can hang around, or you can stay around for final public comment. But this agenda item is over. Thank you very much. The next Human Rights Commission meeting is, Ms. Loop, or when's the next Human Rights Commission meeting? Second Monday of April. Sorry, we don't have the exact date. We'll take a brief, like 1-minute recess to allow people to move along, and thank you all. It could have been far, far worse, so I'm not mad about it. Oh.
Nancy Schulte.
Really? That's funny. Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Another human rights problem. Another human rights problem. You gotta get your daughter back.
Hey, Sean. When was the last time that minimum amount?
Wait for Mark to get back from the
Minimums to get
bathroom.
yourself out of the CIP.
Yeah.
When were those last adjusted? So not long ago.
21,
then.
22.
Okay. That's all I wanted to know. They were
So,
current with-
Lauren, do you remember Kim Brown?
No, but that's a good thing, and we're probably.
Kim Brown from where we had the
Criteria gonna add up.
His friends would call from downstate. Even though he didn't identify with his name, I know him from that. I knew he was getting involved in this.
Now Jerry is kind of our.
We need Mark back. think
I know, I was just doing a
Yeah.
head count.
We didn't lose anybody from up here. No, I don't think so. If I think if we take like a, if we go into closed session, I think they do, they'll like put the like time up, but. That's what I'm wondering. If that got hot mic, it's not.
Yeah. When I walked in.
All right. Wait, did Mark go out front or is, oh, I gotta grab him. I thought he was in the bathroom.
Mark's. He can hear you on the.
Commissioners, please return to your seats for the rest of the meeting. That's Mark.
Let me go get him?
Sure. Okay. I know everybody's willing to like. Oh, fair.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Also, I thought he was in the bathroom this whole time, so otherwise I would have gone out for him before. I apologize.
Just noticed him.
I missed where he went with that. Oh, I didn't even see her back there. Okay, we have some people wrapping some up, but we'll just go ahead and get this meeting started again. We'll call back to order with old business number 1, which is an update discussion regarding the pilot of the two-way on State Street. Did you want to introduce that, Liz, or do you want to hand it off to Harry? I'll hand it off to City Manager.
Thank you for being here this evening. We have an update that this is many years in the making on the two-way data collection being done by the DDA, and interim CEO Harry Buckholder is here, so take it away.
Good evening, Commissioners. Harry Burkholder, interim CEO of the DDA, and pleased to be with you tonight to talk about essentially our one-year checkup on the 2-year pilot project for two-way on State Street, Pine Street, and Boardman. Actually, I have Christopher Zuhl from Progressive who's here, who's going to talk a little bit about where we are in the data collection process and some of the initial results that we found. but really just want to provide an update on that entire data collection process. Just for a little bit of background, this project started in November of 2022 when both the DDA board and the City Commission approved moving forward with this two-year pilot project, essentially calling for an iterative process. And so I think Chris is going to talk a little bit about how we did that. Essentially, we make incremental changes based on our observations. And so Chris is going to talk about those observations that we've witnessed and some of those changes that we've made. I also want to point out that we've had great collaboration with city staff. So we've been meeting, if not weekly or bi-weekly, for the last year and change with the Streets Department, Public Works Department, Engineering Department. We've met with Beta and other stakeholders to talk about how we can make this two-year pilot even better, and just really encouraged by that collaboration and cooperation. I also want to note that we continue to have email devoted to this project that's on our website, so anyone who has comments about the two-way conversion, by all means, please use that email, and that goes right to both DDA and city staff. So with that brief introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
Thank you, Harry. Good morning, or good evening. My name is Chris Zoll. I'm the Transportation Practice Lead with Progressive AE. Thank you for having me again to share tonight our progress on what started actually quite a while ago. When we're talking about downtown, we originally did some of our modeling back in 2020 during some of the COVID timeframe, and that conversation evolved into what was possible as the DDA experimented with some closing of streets in the downtown during that time period. And we've been able to get to the point where we were able to interact and create a safe environment to try a pilot, which we've done quite a bit of learning on. So my agenda tonight, we're going to go through some of the background. I do have some initial observations from our year's worth of data collection. We have done some iteration. There's been some improvements along the way. We have more data collection yet to do, and then I've got the results from what we've collected over the past year or more. So like Harry had mentioned, we were getting ready to make a conversion. In October, we determined what was necessary. The city took the right steps to set up the funding and the changes that would be needed to convert the signs, the pavement markings, the traffic signals, the public engagement, so that in November of 2022, we made the conversion. Then through March through October of last year, at 4 different points in time, we collected a significant amount of data. In June, we did make some adjustments that I'll talk through in more detail. And then we've started the data collection for year 2 this past restaurant week here in March of 24. So some of the initial observations is that as a part of the conversion, we did have some pinch points and some trouble areas. The parking in particular along where State Street turns to Pine Street was a bit of a tight turn, and so we ended up metering off or bagging some meters in that area. The eastbound State Street and Cass Street intersection, originally you would show up in what would be the left turn lane. We've made some adjustments, and I'll get into those details in a little bit, and that's flowing better today. We've also implemented some painted bulb outs with some flexible delineators, kind of what's shown here at Boardman and Front Street. And then similarly, we've also done the painted bulb outs at Pine Street and Front Street. So as a part of the process, we had some feedback early on using the public portal and calls to the DDA, and there was some significant confusion around the travel pattern at Cass Street in particular. And so we did use some temporary message signs to adjust the travel pattern until we were able to get some additional lane assignment signs installed, as well adjusting some of the centerline pavement markings. Again, we did bag some of the meters along the westbound section as State turns to Pine. We did have one local business call and request another spot be bagged just west of Cass. And then the centerline striping really was that game changer to get people into the correct lane through the Cass intersection in particular. So we proposed a 2-year data collection period. so that we would be able to do an apples-to-apples comparison between the years, as well as our previous data that we had collected, and have the opportunity to experience 2 winters for maintenance operations. Unfortunately, I've canceled winter the last 2 seasons, and we haven't had a fair understanding of the snow removal process. We've had a couple of events, but not what's been typical by far. These are the 10 locations that we collect data on systematically throughout the downtown for each of these data collection periods. Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. And we then coalesce all of that data so that we can do some analysis and comparison. All right, so some of our initial data from 2022, just prior to implementing the two-way. We observed the vehicle speeds along State Street, the 85th percentile speed, so the speed at which 85% of the cars are going or slower, was at 26 miles an hour, with the average speed being closer to 22 miles an hour. And then we have the segments for State Street and their volume counts and how the speeds were done by segment. But that data we will not go to in specific detail. So adding the 2023 data, again, this is March, May, July, and October. We see that the 85th percentile speed is 25 miles an hour, which is a mile an hour slower than the pre-conversion, and then the average speed of 20, 21 miles an hour, 1 or 2 miles an hour less. Interestingly, the eastbound volumes were approximately 3 times the volume of westbound, which seems to make sense. We've been in an eastbound pattern for State Street for so long. I do expect that as people become more familiar with the pattern, that volume balance is going to shift a little bit, especially with the impacts of the Grandview Parkway construction. And then the State Street neighborhood volumes in July was approximately equal to the volumes in October. I did find it interesting that along State Street in particular, some of the segments, May was the peak volume rather than July. I would have expected maybe more vehicles on State Street in July, but actually May for two of the segments, 3 of the segments had a higher volume. All right, so moving away from vehicles and talking about pedestrians. We also counted pedestrians and cyclists. I've highlighted a few throughout the sections here in March, in May, July, and October. You'll see that Saturday along State Street are the peak pedestrian volumes. Similarly, along Front Street, Saturdays are also the highest pedestrian volumes, often 2 to 3 times as high as our weekday pedestrian volumes. Now moving to the bicycle volumes, we have from the data collection periods for both State Street and Front Street. We did the morning peak hour and the evening peak hours. And you can see the sum total by hour for both State Street and Front Street. This is going to be more meaningful when we have the 2024 volumes to compare directly against each other. Are we seeing more pedestrians? Are we seeing more cyclists using State and Front Street? Generally, the conversion has been well received by the public. We are seeing that speeds are slightly lower overall, the 85th percentile speed. The average speeds are down just a little bit. Again, the eastbound volumes are still significantly higher than the westbound volumes. Volumes on State Street have increased from October of 2022 compared to the two-way volumes in 2023. Oh, yeah, yep, thank you. The winter maintenance concerns I touched on briefly. We have been in constant communication about the maintenance activities with the city services departments, and in large part, we've had just a few incidents that have been more focused around the operation of equipment, making sure that that's functioning properly, and that we haven't been receiving significant delays as a result of the change in pattern. But we do know that If there is an equipment failure, if there are cars parked in the downtown, that does delay some of the snow removal operations. And there are still a few spots that we continue to monitor. So the engineering team and the progressive team, the State Street and Cass Street intersection in particular, State and Union, as well as the Pine and Front Street intersections. So like I had mentioned, we have started our 2024 data collection here for March. We have 3 more sessions later this year, and then we'll be compiling all of that data, showing the trend lines and understanding the changes in vehicles, speeds, volumes, pedestrian volumes, and cycling volumes as well. And we do have 2 other data points that are in process. The parking meter data was included in the memo. We don't have a full year's worth of data to do an apple-to-apple comparison yet, but working with the parking services for that. And then same with the crash data. We don't have a full year's worth of data to be able to accurately compare between the 2 years. However, I think it should be noted that we have observed 0 vehicles traveling the wrong way on State Street since the conversion.
All right, well, any questions right now for Chris? Go ahead, Jackie.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much for the data. I did a bit deeper dive into the memorandum and did have some questions. One had to do with the differences that you were seeing in 22 versus 23 for speed, and I noticed that there seemed to be a margin of error of plus or minus 3 miles per hour noted in the, so really what we're seeing here maybe isn't statistically significant?
So when I was representing the data for each of the segments, you can see that to summarize it into one specific mile per hour point is a bit difficult to do for all of the different segments of the roadway. So the plus or minus was for all of the volumes, the maximum and minimum for each of the segments. So I was looking to simplistically represent it as easily as I could. But when we talk about speed versus force, the speed is exponentially related to force. So when you experience a crash at 20 miles an hour, your chance as a pedestrian of surviving is 90%. If you experience a crash at 40 miles an hour, your chance of surviving is less than 20%. So the plus or minus relates to the volume or the speed differences across all of the segments simplified into that one number.
So in terms of our understanding of the speed data, for instance, two-way data collected in March of 23, if the average speed is 20 to 21 miles per hour, then that could be as much as little as 3 miles an hour less, or as much as 3 miles an hour more? Am I understanding that right?
Fair statement, correct.
Okay, all right. I also wanted to ask about the generally positive feedback from folks. You mentioned that an online survey of the Boardman neighborhood was done, and there was quite a low response rate. 20 out of 180 households responded. I wondered if you're planning to do any more gathering of feedback. And then there was also a note that you've received, I think, 40 emails from users, none of them since last October, and that feedback was mixed. Maybe you could elaborate on that.
Sure. Just in terms of the outreach to the Boardman neighborhood, we did work with the city to send a postcard to every household within the neighborhood, and that was our response. So we can certainly do additional community feedback, both from a targeted audience in the Boardman neighborhood, but also just to reiterate that we have this email that you can submit comments on, and that will go for the duration of the 2-year pilot. Well, I'm sorry, the second part of your question?
What was that email address?
I think it's two-way, I'm trying to remember now. two-way.com.
Nope.
At downtown.com, sorry. At downtowntc.com.
Two-way at downtowntc dot.
Thank you, yes.
Maybe that could be communicated somewhere more effectively and more broadly.
Can we slide that in the Bay Brief, maybe?
I'll make a note.
There we go.
Right, it is actually was in the Bay Brief this last week, but we will continue to make sure that people are aware of that email. In terms of the emails that we received, at the beginning, just like any project of this magnitude, we got several emails that were not in favor of the change, but not really specific into exact reasons other than we just don't like it. We just don't like the change, and we're not used to it. We're not used to looking at both ways before we cross the street. As time went on, more and more of those emails were just pointing out some of the things that we've changed. That the turn radius as you go around Pine was fairly tight. Is there something we could do about the parking? So it became more of comments on just the general dislike versus actual specific recommendations. And I think since it was in the Bay Brief, we did get 2 additional emails just recently talking about how they liked it and they used it, but the last one we had was from last October.
Thank you. I would be really pleased to see a broader effort to collect data from across the city and also to see what we could do about minimizing the potential for non-response error. That would be lovely. I also wondered, I think it was on page 8 of the report, indicated that pedestrian volume had dropped rather significantly between 2021 and 2023, down like 45 or 50% in July for State Street. Could you tell us more about that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Since the pandemic, we have seen, that revitalization and outdoor activity. As we've moved further and further from the pandemic, we've normalized back to more of our vehicle-centric ways. And so the volume data from 21, 22, 23, 24 continues to see a decrease in pedestrian activity as we've gone back to our vehicles. This isn't just unique to Traverse City. These are the same trends that I'm seeing in other communities that I serve.
Maybe you could provide some examples of that from comparable communities. That would be very helpful.
Would be glad to do so.
Thank you.
Did you have any more questions, Commissioner Anderson? Okay. Commissioner Treadwell.
Yes, it's not in here, and I assume that you have the data or through Chief Richmond can access it, but has there been both a recording of crash or vehicle incidents data, and is there, I like how you have the radar installations and other tools of monitoring both pedestrian volumes and traffic speeds and other things, of looking at either near misses or slight collisions that never got reported. As I told you personally, within a month of the two-way conversion, I got hit by a car when I was crossing the intersection of Pine and Front, but I was uninjured, there was no damage to the vehicle, and I was personally in a hurry, so there was no police report filed.
So yes, as of right now, we don't have the full year's worth of data to be able to do the comparison. We have been in conversations specifically with the DDA, connecting with the police department. We're not aware of any significant crash patterns over the past year, but because I don't have that data, I can't give you the exact answers yet, but we will be as a part of the final report. And then you're spot on. The unreported near misses, without having, the industry doesn't have, to my knowledge, a reasonable tracking tool to be able to account for near misses. I'm hopeful that our technology will be able to learn and assist with that in the future, but it isn't something that is currently commonplace.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen analyses of like a roundabout installation where they have multiple cameras set up and somebody is literally watching hundreds of hours of tape, but that is very labor intensive and not practical for a community to do on a regular basis.
Correct.
And then
sorry if I missed it while I was drifting, but is there a comparison of numbers for before and after for pedestrian traffic?
So we do have some pedestrian volume from our initial study in 2020. I'm concerned that that data compared to the 2023 and 2024 data is going to be skewed because of the pandemic.
Front Street was closed.
We've got a couple of other factors there too, so I'm sure that'll be analyzed. Do we have more questions? Go ahead, Heather. We'll let Heather go first because she hasn't asked yet.
I noticed that I was part of a lot of discussions when we were talking about East Front Street and turning all of Front Street into a two-way. And the persuasive language was all about how it slows traffic down, it makes it safer for pedestrians. But I may be reading this wrong, but it looks to me like the two-way traffic on State Street is a much higher volume than the one-way traffic speeds on Front Street.
Correct. We have seen an increase in volume on State Street as a result of the change.
Not the volume, but the speeds. The speeds are
increased.
Well, I mean, they're at 24, 27, 19, whereas on Front Street, they're at 12, 17,
Correct.
You know,
So
it's
the
very
speeds
slow.
for State Street are higher than Front Street. They are slower under two-way conditions than they are under one-way conditions.
On Front Street, you do have more people utilizing mid-block crosswalks.
Yeah.
So
Bump out.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yes, okay. I also found it was interesting, the pedestrian volume graph, and these are just some random remarks. On Cass and Front, it was definitely the place to be on Saturday nights. But except for July, most people are not getting down to Front and Union Street, which means they're probably not going up Union Street to Old Town. And is there anything, you know, I see people standing down there looking at the map. Maybe this is a signage problem. Maybe we need to do something about that. The other thing I notice is that there's a mention in here saying that people are starting to discover that they can park on State Street and it's easier. And I personally have also discovered that. But the bike traffic is much higher on State Street than it is on Front Street. Well, it's because who wants to ride their bike in Front Street? It's awful. And, you know, maybe my conclusion is misguided, but I would say that it's easier to ride on State Street because there aren't so many cars parked there. And the traffic may be a little bit lower. And I think a lot of people would agree with me that cars and bikes don't mix. And I know you don't want to talk about taking parking out of Traverse City, but it may be something to think about to take away some of that. That's not your purview, I know, speaking of purviews, but something to think about is that removing one of those lines of parking and putting a bike lane in so that we have a east-west bike corridor. That's all I have.
Great. Commissioner Anderson, you had a few more questions?
Oh, it was not a question. I was just responding to Mr. Wilson. I think the top of page 8, there's a table that would help for comparing pedestrian volumes 2021 to 2023 on both Front and State, if that was what you were seeking.
Were there any other questions at this time before? I have a couple, but I didn't want to supersede anyone.
Just one more.
Go ahead.
Was any type of analysis for the right and left turn onto and off? Like I'm thinking of Cass and the amount of people I've just personally seen not realize that it's straight or left in one lane and right only in the other, and how many people cut, near misses, cutting one another off. And I don't think it's like that going south on Cass. I think it's one left turn lane and then it's straight or right. And if it would make sense to kind of make that more uniform.
So we do have the turning movement volume and video for all of the data collection periods. We can look more specifically, at some time periods to see if there's a pattern of near misses. but the lane assignments are usually done based on the volume demands. So I'll be glad to double check that to make sure that the volume that we have is representative of how it should be operating in the street.
I'll just jump in with a couple things really quick. The comments about the walking data in 2020 shamefully reminded me that in 2020, I think I was walking 3 to 4 miles a day, and I am definitely not doing that anymore. With the change from Zoom meetings and things like that, I think we are kind of back to and I agree with Commissioner Anderson, though, let's see what other cities look like with that too, but I think a lot of us have resumed our more frenetic pace from before. The couple questions I had is, I appreciate that we should do some more outreach, and I would be curious about that as well. What I'd also like to see with that data when that comes, and I guess this is kind of more for Harry and DDA than you, Chris, is what's an actual good response rate? We're in the middle of a very heavy election year right now, and we see, trending data says so-and-so's at 38% or 77% or whatever else, and the sample size, though, isn't every single person in that county or every single person in America. So what's a good sample size for some of this data that we are looking for? Obviously, it's local, smaller numbers. We hope to get much higher than that, but what's a good sample size for some of the data that we're trying to collect to give us a better idea of how we're doing on that? The other one is anecdotal. I was enjoying a French dip at Mode's this weekend, and was pointed out to me, and I'm sure this will come when we get the traffic data, but kind of a seed to plant for long term, is the way that intersection 2 is configured very differently and has caused a lot of confusion about when people can go and what lane they're supposed to be in, especially heading, I believe it was they were commenting heading eastbound. They hear a lot of traffic noises, let's say horns and brakes. So checking that out. But I will also, I am curious again when we get to the DDA analysis as this project, enters into the second year and we look at that. I do know that also Modes shared that if you notice they've got a new sign, it faces out, because they have found that with the two-way, more people are discovering they're even there. Because before they'd be driving by and that would kind of be in their rear view. And so I'd be curious as we go along a little bit more to hear some of the updated data from. Part of the reason why we did this was to encourage more interaction with businesses on State Street, so we can get some more data on how businesses are changing in ways like new signage, but also are they seeing an uptick in foot traffic or new regulars, new discoveries. So I think that was also, while we look at the numbers, that was also part of why we did it, is to create more engagement on State Street. So I'd like to see some more reports on that as we're checking in on this pilot as well, beyond just the numbers and data, numbers and stats. So. That was all from me. Did anybody else have anything else they wanted to add? Go ahead, Mitch.
Yeah, I would like to echo some of Mayor Shamrow's ideas. Progressive AE has primarily been looking at the traffic flow, so this would be more of a Harry issue for Harry. But I would like data on just how commercial patterns have changed. I don't want to see each business's gross receipts in a nice chart, but if we can see, okay, there's some turnover in businesses in both Front and State, but see if there has been a change from volume of economic activity for, say, a comparable restaurant on Front Street versus one on State Street, and how that has impacted. Obviously, something that relatively new that opened up on State Street, yes, that might look like there's more economic activity, but that happened regardless of the two-way conversion. So existing businesses and their change would be good metrics.
Great. And then anything else from the commission before? So this was the one item that we had slated for a study session this month. As you all know, we canceled our study sessions for this month. This was the one item we kind of wanted to make sure we got forward. So as this has no motion with it, I will allow, if anybody here would like to make public comment on this or has any questions about it. Long pause. Seeing none. All right. Well, thank you for that presentation, guys. Thank you for all your questions, everyone, and your observations. I think that just helps us get better dialed in on numbers. And with that, we will move to the pilot request from WODA for Annika Place 2. And I'll hand that to you, Liz, to tee up.
Thank you, Mayor Shamrow. Tonight we have with us Craig Patterson with the WODA companies, and they're asking for a revised resolution that was previously authorized by this board, and that the revised resolution granting tax exemption for the property at 1020 Hastings Street, as requested by the Annika II Limited Dividend Housing Association, have a term of 50 years. I believe the previous approved pilot was for 45 years. And if the city attorney could speak to that.
Sure. So typically what MISTA requires that the pilot last for the life of the financing that comes from MISTA, and that had been 45 years. They've changed their format of the financing of this project a little bit, and Mr. Patterson can speak to that if you have questions. So now MISTA is requesting 50 years instead of 45 years. And all of the other aspects of this project have remained the same number of units and so forth. It's all the same. It's just that one aspect. And the other piece is that there's been one round of funding, and they needed a little bit more time to get through the next round of funding. So it's just giving them a little bit more time to do that. And I understand that they are hoping to be funded and then under construction by the end of the fall. So, but Mr. Patterson can correct me if I'm wrong with any of that.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. It's good to be back. It was a surprise to us that MISTA was requiring this additional tenure for this pilot. As you remember, it was a year ago I was here, and we were talking about an April application for Annika Place 2 with 52 units in a 4-story building, and it was for a competitive round for funding in which we applied, but unfortunately we were not funded. Because of the great need here in Traverse City for affordable housing, we decided to search high and low for an alternative to assure that we could deliver 52 units of affordable housing with 19 vouchers to support the homeless population in the city. And so we found another mechanism, and it's called direct lending from MISTA, which is a totally different funding way of getting your credits. However, the problem with this is that there are different design standards, there are different requirements when it comes to the pilot tenure, but the good thing is you do not compete like we had to compete on Ruth Park, Annika Place, and Annika 2. We were 2 for 3 as of last July, when we got the declination saying that we could not be funded. So what we plan to do, and we are currently in process with an application for funding, we plan to continue to work toward a 4% application, 4% housing tax credits, and 3 mortgages that we're getting from MISTA. The 3 mortgages have a tenure of 50 years. If we do not get the pilot vote for a 50-year pilot, then we will not be funded. So with that, I can answer questions. At the present time, we've been to loan committee once, and our application has been put on the back burner until we do some additional budgeting, but they also are now insisting on a 50-year pilot.
And then I just, thank you, Mayor Shamro. We do also have a video updating on Annika Place, and so I wasn't sure if you wanted to entertain questions first or if you wanted to show the video on the update for the Annika Place.
Why don't we show the video on Annika Place, because it'll give you some idea of the what we have done together. We do plan to start occupancy at Annika Place with 53 units on Garfield. We think occupancy will start by mid to late April. We already have pre-leased all units. All 53 units are pre-leased, and we still have a waiting list of 260. So why don't we show this? And this was pretty much narrated by our construction GC, and he did a great job.
It's above the Call of Duty.
Mishta produced this
Today
video.
we're in Traverse City, Michigan. The name of this project is Annika Place. There's a total of 53 units here. This is, as you can see, it's going to be a 4-story unit with an elevator. We have a mixture of 1 and 2 bedroom units. This will be one of our 1-bedroom units. Over there we have the kitchen, and then at the entry we have 2 closets. Walking into this area, there will be our mechanical room, and then again we'll have the washer and dryer hookups, of course with our shower unit and toilet and sink. So our panelization process that we utilize on this job and one other project that we're working on in Traverse City would save us somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks on a typical build schedule compared to stick framing. And when I say stick framing, I mean all framing happens on site. After the foundation's installed, the framer comes in, there's lumber everywhere. With the panelization system, the panels are being built off-site while foundations are being installed. So here's the inside look of the panelization system. So a panel, you can see the separation down here at the bottom plate and up through these studs which come together. This is one panel that goes all the way to that end wall over there. In the concrete, you can see our heavy-duty masonry anchors that fasten this panel into place.
Mishta is critical to a development like Annika Place. We'll be able to offer affordable, very high-quality housing here. And without the tax credits that are allocated by Mishta, we wouldn't have the ability to do that.
One of our objectives, knowing that Traverse City is a coasty town, a Coast Guard town, God bless the men and women that are doing this, we're really focusing and hoping that our affordable housing will house some of those military personnel. One aspect that I appreciate about the WOTA buildings really is the overall design. Aesthetically, we got different colors, we got different textures, there's a lot going on. So I really give a lot of credit to our design team to make a building that really stands out in the community. I feel that the tenants of our projects are excited. They look forward to coming home each day. They're looking forward into pulling into this parking lot and looking at this beautiful building and calling that home.
So once again, by the end of April, we should be starting occupancy. We received a pilot for that one, and without the pilot, we could have never been funded. And we are targeting some of our rents there so that coasties can live there as well. So with that, I will take any questions you may have about this pilot request.
Go
Yes,
ahead,
ma'am.
Heather.
First of all, thank you very much for bringing your very attractive affordable housing to Traverse City. Very, very grateful for this. I just have one kind of sort of nerdy question. The panelization, it sounds brilliant. Is that your company that's creating those panels, or are you getting that from someplace else?
No, ma'am, we do not create them. They are built in the region. I think we sourced these out of Gaylord area, but I do know there was a panelization company that was trying to start down south of here in Kingsley area at one time. I've lost track of that, but anyhow.
But you're building then, these are sort of standard templates, and that's how you're able to use the panels?
Right. There's a couple advantages to panelization. In up north weather, short building seasons, cutting 4 to 6 weeks is absolutely essential and helpful. The other thing is that it helps us in the case of like Annika 2, where we have to pay prevailing wage Davis-Bacon for construction. If the panels are built off-site, then they're not subject to that prevailing wage that comes from the state government. But what it does is it helps our budget. One of our challenges with Annika 2 is we have a very thin budget. When I mentioned 4% credits versus 9% credits with Annika Place 1, there's a huge gap that you have to make up, and that's why Mishta was brought in with their underwriting and their extras that they have to have, since they have skin in the game. Mishta, the State Housing Commission, has skin in the game as opposed to federal tax credits like we got on the 9%.
Thank you.
Mitch?
Yes. Are you expecting the 50-year lease contract to become more standard across MISTA projects? Because
I
that's
don't.
relatively new to me. I haven't seen
Well,
50-year time span before.
it's a great question. I'm sorry for interrupting. It's a great question from the standpoint, this is the first time Woda Cooper Companies, and I've been with them since 2002, that we've ever done a 4% in the state of Michigan. We've done them in other states, but in order to make it work, you have to be in a location where the rents are high enough. And most of the 4% deals in the state of Michigan are done in cities like Kalamazoo and Grand Rapids and Detroit, where there's a lot of soft funding, extra funds that can be given to fill the gap. We were fortunate locally because Goodwill received some funds from the county, $400,000 of ARPA, and they stepped up to the plate and said, because we all need this affordable housing, and Dan is with us tonight, who's the executive director, he was willing to transfer that funding over to help us fill that gap. But I'm not sure how many 4% will do to answer your question, but every 4% done in the state of Michigan will have to have a 50-year pilot. In the future, we may do another 9% here, and we wouldn't need that lengthy of a pilot.
Go ahead, Lauren. I just asked Lauren a question. I think she has an answer.
I just want to, Mr. Patterson, I just want to ask a clarifying question for the public, and I think I know the answer. But the 6% shelter rents that are mentioned in the motion and in the resolution refer to the pilot that is paid to the city. The 4% refers to the funding from the state of Michigan, correct?
Yes, true.
Okay.
We still are pledging a 6% pilot like before.
I have
so
that
it's clear
question
for
so-
everyone what you're voting
Sorry,
on.
too many percentages.
I know, and that's not my forte anyway, so that's why I raised that question. Everybody else probably was following fine. Jackie, go ahead.
Thank you for addressing that. I was confused.
Oh, good. Thank you. Now I don't feel as bad.
And I wondered also, in your firm's letter, you mentioned that you would be pledging affordable rents for no less than 45 years, while the pilot will be for 50 years. Is that correct? Am I misunderstanding that?
That is correct. I wanted to emphasize that there's no difference now than before. Before we pledged rents for 45 years, and that pledge is represented in a covenant that is recorded with the deed. But because this is this special funding, the mortgage goes for 50 years, so that mortgage will be recorded, and we have to keep the rents for 50 years. So it could have been confusing, but what I was trying to show, what we did before and how it has bearing on what we're asking now.
So can I ask a clarifying on that? So the mortgage and the terms that are dictated by it, including the required affordability at the rates that are in there, they supersede that 45 that was in the deed because that was created during the previous term, under the previous terms, now that we're agreeing on these current ones.
Right, that'd all be updated.
And then just my perennial question when we're talking pilots is if we can get some sense of the difference in city taxes at the 6% pilot versus the non-pilot tax revenues.
We can get an estimate on that from the
Thank you.
assessor. Yep.
Okay, any further questions? Again, this is an updating of a pilot that had previously been discussed and approved. Do we have a motion?
Sure. I move that the revised resolution granting tax exemption for the property at 1020 Hastings Street as requested by Annika Place 2 Limited Dividend Housing Association Limited Partnership at a rate of 6% and a term of 50 years be adopted.
Support.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Shaw and Mitch. I just said Mitch because I couldn't think of your Treadwell for a second there. Commissioner Mitch. All right, with that, any further comments before we open for public comment? Any public comment on this? Go ahead, Dan.
Well, good evening. Dan Buron. I live at 242 East 9th Street, Traverse City. I'm also the executive director for Goodwill of Northern Michigan. As I think Craig already, did a great job kind of describing the project, but I just want to emphasize how important this project is and the fact that the county was supportive of this, was willing to allow us to reallocate our dollars to this project. This is a shovel-ready project. They're very close with MSHA right now. And we also got support from the community development group of the Traverse City Grand Traverse region to also support this project. With the 19 units for people who are experiencing homelessness, that comes with the vouchers, which means their housing can be affordable based on what their income is, but is a rare thing to have. It's very important for this community, for our efforts to end chronic homelessness in this region. And we worked with Water for a long time. They're great partners, and really glad about this project. And I was glad to hear your comment. They have beautiful buildings. They do a good job. They know what they're doing. So.
Great. Thanks, Dan. Any other comments?
Justin Reed, 630 Kaiser Drive, Apartment 1B, Traverse City resident. I just want to say that this is a really good deal. Because, we have a homeless issue in Traverse City, and this is one of the tools that can be used. It's very rare for something like this to happen, and I fully support this as a resident, that this gets continued and goes through, and whatever little hiccups there are, well, there's going to be little hiccups, but overall, I think that this should just be passed through, and thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment? Bringing it back, there's one thing I meant to say earlier, and it's kind of a learn from experience. It's exciting that this is a funding mechanism that, just to let everybody know, often when projects come to us, they have to go to MSHA. They sometimes have to go back from here a couple of times, where everything in the cities has close proximity to things like a sewage treatment plant or other low-income housing, because we are a denser city. So to not have to be held to that standard and have to keep kind of reapplying sometimes and kind of playing with what we have to make sure that goes through, all of us knowing that, I live just as close to the sewage treatment plant as some of the proposed developments, it's nice to know that there's this option out there right now, and even if it is a little bit longer term, and how we have to deal with that. So I just want to point that out. I know we've had some newer commissioners, and we don't always talk about that when it comes up. So any other comments or questions before we vote? Okay, with that, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Looking forward to that. All right, moving on to new business. Security services at the Governmental Center, and I will hand that over to you, City Manager. Thank you. Sorry. It's okay. Everybody's screens, I think, went.
You will find attached in your board packet a memo from our Human Resources Director, Christine Bosley, who is here this evening to answer questions regarding entering into a cost-sharing agreement with the Grand Traverse County for additional security services here at the Governmental Center. This came out of a joint city-county meeting on moving forward with some options for additional security on the first floor based on feedback from our staff. So we thought this was the quickest way for us to move forward, and while we're still working on other ideas for improving security at the building. The additional, so we already have a contract with STT Security. The city's portion would be an additional $500 per week or $26,000 annually. And if you had any more specific questions, I can try to answer those for you, or we also have Christine here to answer those as well.
Do you have any questions? Go ahead, Mitch.
Yes, this isn't a criticism of SAT Security. I've seen how they handle things in this building and the building next door, and it seems to be going okay. I'm just a little perplexed because the city has a police department, the county has a sheriff's department. Is there a good reason why our own resources can't also handle security within our own buildings?
Yes, but go ahead, Ms.
I think I can answer that, but I don't think we have the staffing on either the sheriff's end or the Traverse City end to accommodate that request. Is that correct?
Also, I would just point out the practicality that it would be split between us and our weird, sometimes, it would be, is that our 2674, or whatever our percentage ownership is it 50/50? What benefits do they qualify for then and everything? So I think when we're dealing with mutual things, the third-party person can sometimes make that a little bit easier for us all to share in on.
Understood.
All right, any other questions, or I would take a motion?
I'll make the motion that the mayor and city clerk execute an agreement with Grand Traverse County for additional security services at the governmental center not to exceed $26,000 annually. Such agreement subject as to its substance by the city manager and as to its form by the city attorney, with funds therefore available in the general fund government-owned buildings.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Okay, any public comment on this item? Seeing none. Any further comments from the commission? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you for that, everyone. We skipped 2 because we already did that. So we move on to our annual presentation from Chief Tuller for our update on what's going on with the fire department. And we'll just talk for a second here while Sarah gets the setup back up and running after the WOTA presentation. Thank you for your patience, Chief. I misspoke earlier. I think this normally would have been included in a study session too, but Chief has been kind enough to wait out a couple hours here and give us his report tonight.
All right, I'm going to start humming a Jeopardy tune here in a minute. Wait for
oh, then the pressure's really on.
Oh, that's all right. We'll bring it up on the monitors here. That's all right. We're not waiting.
Oh.
No, while we're waiting for the visual to come up, Jim Tuller, Fire Chief for the City of Traverse City. Proud to present our 2023 annual report. Won't take just a bit of your time this evening. I know it's running a little long, but waiting for...
Plan B, hold on.
Make it so. Make it so. Anyway,
Chief Tuller, magic's not working quite right.
I know. All right, while Sarah's working on a visual, I'll start with the end first. How's that? So some things that we're working on, a couple of big projects, of course. In November of 23, we were authorized by support of the people to look at starting our primary EMS transport project.
Yay.
We had a lot of work with myself and my captains, and the city manager, has formed a city management team to help with that effort. And we've had a couple of good meetings. We've got meetings scheduled now. And a really strong group, a lot of department heads and staff involved, all with their areas of expertise to help move this project forward. And there are a lot of people out there. Hard to believe Fire Chief doesn't know everything. There are a lot of people out there, experts in their field, and we're very grateful for their help and as we move down this path. And we are working on hiring additional people to replace a couple of, one planned and one unplanned vacancy. Thanks to the team at HR and specifically Mr. Jason Johnson. He's been knocking it out of the park every day. We had a young man we hired in February, spent 2 weeks with us and went back home. Mm-hmm. And then we were provided with information that one of our firefighters, I believe, has been with us 4 years now. His family, he's taking his family and moving them to Wisconsin in July, and we have a planned retirement of one of our captains, Larry Mueller, who's, as of August, will be with us 25 years. So we're working to fill those vacancies, and then as we move forward with the introduction of 10 more personnel, that'll be coming in front of the commission, I think, in just a few weeks. So that was kind of the wrap-up, but now we'll start with the meat and potatoes here. So we just have a few slides here to go over. I'm not going to read them verbatim. They're all in a packet. And for those at home, if you want to access them, go to the City of Traverse City website and look up Fire Department. Click there and you can find it. There we go. Just an overview of our staffing. One item I want to draw your attention to on this page is on the lower left under administrative staff. We were fortunate enough to be authorized to hire a full-time fire inspector. That was a void in our department for more than a few years, and we were finally able to do that. And there's been a dramatic uptick in not only our fire code compliance inspections, but also all the different various things that individual's been able to accomplish. And we have a slide that addresses that later in the program. But also, too, this shows these personnel are also all cross-trained. You know, even though they're driving they're out there in their own vehicle performing their duties. If there's an emergency, they're available to respond. So it makes us pretty strong during the daytime. No surprises here. Our call volume tends to creep up every year. 70% of our calls are still medically or rescue-based. That's still following the national trends. We had a 5.7 increase over the previous year, and as the population continues to grow, not only within the city, but with the visitors and such that come into our city every year, we anticipate that to keep growing. And there's another illustration with a bar graph of the increase in calls. As I mentioned earlier, the primary ALS transport project is something we're heavily involved in developing, along with assistance of the city management team and other staff members. I know that in April, we've began an RFP process to solicit bids for 2 rescue ambulances, pretty much identical to the one you see here on your slide, Rescue 1, a 4-wheel drive unit. And that's been out there in bid land right now, and I believe the bid opening is April 10th, if I'm correct. And so we're moving on that, and there'll be a certain amount of build-out time that we'll learn about at the bid opening, but it's all part of the process. You know, as I mentioned back in November, in mid-November, when we learned we were successful, you know, we're not going to be able to flip a switch and make this thing happen. It's going to take a number of months to get the personnel and the equipment, so we're on the path to do that. We train a lot at the fire department, those that have visited us, whether as new commissioners or candidates or just happen to stop by. We spend a lot of our time training. As I like to share amongst public groups, you know, if we were a professional football or baseball team, that's all we would practice, and then we'd be really good. We don't know if we're going to a soccer game, a football game, lacrosse, you name it. You know, so we have to be ready for anything. So to speak. So we do spend a lot of time training. Some of that's classroom, particularly on days like today, but this warm weather we had in February, we were able to accomplish a lot of outside training because we're trying to reconfigure our process of responding to residential structure fires based on information that we're learning from Underwriters Laboratories experiments, National Institutes of Standards and Technology, all their data, some other studies and trials, is presenting the fire service with even less time than what we thought we had before a room and contents fire completely involves that room and fire. And so we're looking at our personnel and how we set up our engines, our hose loads, our nozzles, our GPMs, our gallons per minute we can provide on the fire with our staffing, and we're reconfiguring that. And trying a few things, try to be nimble, try to be responsive, try to be right there for every emergency. And we were able to accomplish a lot of things during this warm spell. Thankfully, we were able to get outside and do that. We don't like, you know, throwing a lot of water around inside the fire station. It's not a good idea. And again, our specialized training, our tech rescue portion of our department was able to join up with Grand Traverse Metro and validate as a MAVIS team. So what does that mean? That means that we can move anywhere within this part of the state. We are trained to and abide by the training guidelines with Michigan Task Force 1. So if there is an emergency, like say another tornado in Grayling or something in Grand Rapids or such, we can take a few of our people, a few of Metro's people, a few people from other departments that are on this group, and we can send them there. And we can mix them right in with the varsity team, and they're going to be safe and be able to make a difference. But by being part of this organization, if we need help, it's coming. without question. And water training, unfortunately, we're not able to. Where's Mitch? Mitch, you asked me, I don't know how many times about ice. Yeah, we didn't get enough this year, sorry. But we're getting ready for the spring boating season here real soon. And another project we're looking at is the boat that's pictured there in the slide presentation is our 1984 16-foot rigid hull inflatable Marine One. We're looking to replace that, and we're involved in meetings with DPS and looking at the budget and those types of things. And when we're ready with them, we'll bring a package to the city management team. But it's served us well, but it's old and it's tired, and we need something a little bit bigger and a lot more capable. And again, our slide about fire prevention services, a lot of those numbers are a big jump from last year. We hit the gate, we came right out of the gate with our Knox Box program downtown many times. We go to emergencies after hours when businesses are closed, where there's an alarm activation. We look in the windows, we don't see anything. We hear the alarm going off, we don't smell anything. We need to get into that building, and the keys in the key box are not up to date. And we try everything. Our last resort is to force a door or breach a door or break a door. Man, we don't like to do that. So our new fire inspector took it upon himself. He went out and got a lot of those keys changed out, and that's something that we continue to work on going into 2024. And that way we can access these buildings and not incur any damage and keep everybody happy. But we can get our job done in quick order. And these are some things we're looking at. This is the last slide we have for the evening. We're always looking for ways to improve. We're always looking for ways to stay aligned with the city's policies and procedures, particularly in the areas of environment and eco-friendly and those types of things. Over the past year and a half, we've changed some of our chainsaws we use during windstorms, right? They're electric now. They don't burn gas. Some of our positive pressure ventilation fans, they're electric. They're a lot quicker. They don't burn gas. So we're looking at ways to make changes where we can, and we're always looking to do that. So I'm sure I'm probably at 5 minutes or so. Thanks, Sarah. But that's all I have for tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions in quick fashion here.
Any question? Good.
Yeah, just one little question. Thank
Yes,
you very
ma'am.
much, Chief Teller.
You're welcome.
You look very nice in your uniform.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Do you have any data breakdown on the rescue EMS in the city? Like how many were drug and alcohol related as opposed to illness or accident? That kind of information might be useful to us when we start talking about the homeless population.
Yeah, not off the top of my head.
Okay.
But that's something I can definitely furnish through the city manager's office.
Thank you very much.
Good question.
I will make a quick note about that.
Very good question. Any other questions? Go ahead, Mitch.
Yes, Chief, you already hinted at it, but
yes, sir.
We didn't have any ice, or very little in Bourbon Lake, so there was no ice rescues that we had, but due to the general mild winter and instability of ice across Michigan, I heard from what I see as a record number of ice rescues across the region. So I'm wondering, especially for new hires to the department, obviously not the rest of this winter, such as it wasn't, but will there be opportunities to get them trained with ice rescue?
Sure. Yeah, at all opportunity. The suits that we wear to protect our firefighters from the cold water during an ice rescue, those are 3-season suits because of the temperature that we have and the environment we have. We'll wear them all the way up into June in open water rescues just because the water's not there yet, right? It doesn't get warm till like July, August, Cherry Festival time. So the equipment they're very familiar with. As far as ice, we kind of got to wait on Mother Nature. I suppose I could turn in a training request to send some folks up to Alaska, but I'd be the first to go. But no, we have standard operating guidelines in place, how everybody's supposed to operate in a standardized fashion. We review those, and we do everything except actually get out on the ice. So, yeah, we'll be ready.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I haven't fallen through this winter. And fortunately, the times that I have fallen through, I've gone through twice on Boardman Lake, once on Grand Traverse Bay. I was able to rescue myself, but I am very grateful that our fire department has the training to get people off. That's in there.
Sounds like you need some training on when not to go on the ice.
No, I can get myself off of the situations that I get myself into.
Just teasing, just teasing.
All right, Mitchell. Maybe you can call my cell the next time you go out.
There you go, see.
Okay. All right, well, thank you.
Well,
Commissioner-
did Commissioner Anderson, did I see your hand go up?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, no, sorry, right before
There you
Mitch
go.
spoke, I thought I saw your hand go up. I wanted to make sure you had a chance. Apologies. Okay, we're all good to go. Sorry.
All right, well, thank you, Commissioners.
Thank
Madam
you very
Mayor.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to point out to everybody, Chief was talking about the trainings they've been able to do in the last month with the milder weather, and the TC firefighters have social media pages, and they'll often post videos from that, and it's kind of cool to see what they're doing and what they're practicing and training on as they can. So if anybody's interested in seeing that a little bit more, they're documenting that pretty well, so that's cool.
Yep, and you're always welcome. Our training time is 1 o'clock every afternoon for the most part. So if any of you or citizens want to come down and see what we're up to, you're more than welcome.
Great,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Chief. Okay, moving on to, well, really, myself and Mayor Pro Tem Wilson. We have the annual budget, or not budget, that's not our problem yet. The performance evaluation for the city manager and city attorney coming up. We have a couple newer people. That just tends to be, or how we tend to do this is we work with a facilitator. They interview each commissioner individually and some selected staff members. Ahead of time, we get statements from the city manager and the city attorney, kind of reflecting on their year, to kind of tee it up. That helps us often to even immediately identify if there's any differences between where maybe the commissioners see our priorities and where our staff are seeing it. And also get a feel, I think often it can also illuminate some of the things that they do that we might not always realize too. And then from there, some questions are formulated. They are then sent to the commissioners to review. Those will be the questions that will be asked in those one-on-one interviews. After that, everything is synthesized by the reviewer, in this case, Woody Smith. We get a report back. We all get to look at that. That gets submitted then. Around June, we'll all meet with each employee, as they are of ours, our 2 employees of this board. And then from there, it's pretty standard that we just file the report. And if there's any requests for any compensation changes, that will come to myself and Commissioner Wilson first, just to request that it be put on the agenda, but then that is something that is always discussed in public and part of the process as well. So that's kind of the overview. This is just to get the ball rolling on it. There'll be a lot more contact with you as commissioners as we go along. Did you have any questions? Yes, go ahead.
I wondered if at some point, or when would be the appropriate point to bring up whether there are possibilities for some adopting some best practices in annual reviews, things like 360 feedback or evaluation on values, adoption of individual goals and progress reporting, some things like that?
So, yeah, we could definitely talk. I mean, I don't think, to be fair, I don't think we'll get that done before June. But that's a great point to bring up. Yeah, that's a great point to bring up that we can definitely work on. I haven't gone through the process a few times now. I think there's some value in some of those. Some are part of the process. As you'll see, some of the goals and how we individually do that. I would kind of bring up here, our employees are in a very unique position as they are very public. So a lot of what we do, negotiations, even in my time back in 2021, we had a reprimand that was publicly discussed, because that is how that works. But we also do, for people who might be newer, watching from outside, there are times when we do set goals or things to work on that we will then meet not individually, behind in a closed session that is allowed to work with an employee. So that has been going on throughout the time. It's just not always done out here and the public can't see, and that's out of respect for our employees. And when we have taken action when it's been grievous, and when it's something that just needs to be worked on, we tend to do that as a group. That is something we're allowed to do. But yes, I think getting some more standardized, or at least a clearer document of sorts. We're doing that with our boards and such right now. I think we could do that with this as well, so people kind of have a summary than just me sitting up here kind of telling you how it's been. We can kind of put down in writing how it goes, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, this does have a motion with it.
I'll make the motion that the 2024 performance evaluation process for the city manager and city attorney, as recommended by Mayor Amy Shamrow and Mayor Pro Tem Mark Wilson, and as submitted with the official meeting materials for the March 18th, 2024 meeting of the City Commission, be approved.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Stanley and Commissioner Shaw. Any other questions? Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. We'll get that process started. I believe we've already gotten some emails to try and find some dates where Mayor Pro Tem Wilson and I can meet with Woody, so we'll get you all looped into that shortly. And now we have the waiver for defined benefit for MERS, and I will definitely hand this over to Liz to help us walk us through this here.
Thank you, Mayor Shamrow. And I normally wouldn't read out loud the entire executive summary, but our new finance director and treasurer, Heidi Sheppy, put together a really nice and clear summary that I think the benefit would public from hearing. As a part of the year-end financial reporting process, the Michigan Department of Treasury requires the completion and submission of Form 5572 based on the Protecting Local Government Retirement and Benefits Act of 2017. Following the form's reporting format, the city's general employees' MERS plan funded ratio was at 52.4%. Because the funded ratio is below 60% that the act requires, the city is required to submit the attached application for waiver for preliminary review of the underfunded status. And I would like to applaud the Finance Department who worked with MERS to estimate an additional voluntary contribution to bring the plan up to 75% funded in 9 to 10 years. We are proposing an additional annual voluntary contribution to MERS in the amount of $250,000, which would be included in the 24-25 and future budgets. This contribution plan is projected to bring our funding level up to 60% funded by 2028 and 75% funded by 2033. This additional annual contribution will potentially help minimize the increasing ARC payment in the future if alternate economic assumptions are implemented. As required in the waiver application, we are asking the board approve the following resolution to commit to additional payments in future years. And I just want to note that I believe that this happened once before in 2020, and that the city followed the same process. But we want to be more proactive instead of wondering how the market will bear and how those percentages will be. We really we talked it over as a team and decided that 75% was a really good place to be for funding. And more technical questions about funding ratios and where you want to be and why, I would have to turn that over to Heidi.
Absolutely, and I would just say that Light and Power went through this, maybe it was my first or second year on the board, so they've really been working on that in the last 6-7 years in a similar kind of increasing the funding a bit and getting us up a little less unstable. So this isn't, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not uncommon. We're not in a crisis, but it is something we're working on. So does anybody have questions? Heidi is ready, but who's sharp enough at this hour to do it? I have faith. Go ahead, Jackie. I was looking at you because I knew you'd do it.
Okay, I'll ask. I am curious as to whether this is going to have a positive impact on Traverse City's bond rating, or have we already topped out?
We can always improve our bond rating, so there's no problem there. The higher the percentage of the funding, it will improve the bond ratings. So yeah, as we grow from 52 to 60 to 75, it will help.
Any other questions? There you go. Good, well handled, lady. Okay, if there's no other questions, I would take a motion.
I move that the city manager be authorized to execute the Protecting Local Government Retirement and Benefit Act application for waiver, defined benefit pension retirement systems, and further, that the resolution authorizing an additional contribution to municipal employees' retirement system, MERS, in fiscal year 2023 be adopted.
That was a lot of acronyms. Thank you for that. Do I have support?
Support.
Okay. We've got, I see a touch off there, so we'll have it by Shaw and Anderson on that one. Any further questions or comments? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, we're moved on to appointments now, and we have a Light and Power appointment up here. Paul Heiberger from the board is up, and we have a motion for an ad hoc to be formed. Anybody? Actually, let me check on this really quickly here. Sorry, I needed to look at one thing in this. I think I caught something that this might actually, sorry, this was pointed out earlier. I think we might actually want to bring this back.
Okay.
Let's bring this back to the next business meeting. There was
Okay.
something that was missing here, and I just wanted to have us re-examine that.
Okay.
Thank you for, Heather gave me the look to remind me, being nice at this hour, that I wasn't following that completely. So we'll table that, or we'll bring it back. We'll
Defer.
Defer it, thank you. We'll defer it until April 1st, and we'll move on to our Parks and Rec appointment. Okay, so this is that appointment. So let's see who's on this one. Sorry, Treadwell's in both parts of this, and it confused me. So it's, or in a couple parts of this. So it's Anderson, Warner, and Shaw. So if somebody wants to make that motion.
I move that the appointment of Paul Wilkins, Tina Soering, and Gerald DeGrazia to the terms expiring September 1st, 2026 on the Parks and Recreation Commission, seats previously held by David Grams, Mitchell Treadwell, and Andrea Diebler, as recommended by the ad hoc committee, consisting of Commissioner Jackie Anderson, Commissioner Tim Werner, and Commissioner Heather Shaw, be approved.
I will second that.
All right, thank you, Anderson Shaw. And I kind of flubbed that. Did you all want to say anything else about the process? And I just did, I flubbed it, letting you.
I would just like to say we were so grateful to have so many extremely well-qualified candidates. It made it difficult to choose.
It did.
Great. All right, any public comment on this? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell?
No.
Commissioner Shaw?
Yes.
Commissioner Stanley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay, motion passes. And moving on to public comment. And is there any general public comment? Please feel free to share now.
My name's Paul Deo. I live at 336 West 13th Street. I want to thank the city manager, the mayor, and staff for initiating the memorandum of understanding focused on sheltering the homeless in Traverse City. Though the use of Safe Harbor failed in its initial execution due to vocal opposition and the limitations of primarily volunteer staff, I think the intent is still extremely important. The initiative shouldn't stall. I don't believe there's any citizen satisfied with the unintentional and unorganized situation of homeless segregation in the Pines. The residents are at risk, the police and fire are at risk, and support staff, such as the Quick Response Team and Goodwill Outreach, are at risk. The location is at risk without proper sanitation. Homelessness is a result of the limited housing in our region. Because of organizations like Housing North and the response by various levels of government, housing stocks may see improvements, but it's likely that managing the effects of homelessness will continue to be an issue for Traverse City for the foreseeable future. We must continue to develop a plan. There are other municipalities dealing with similar problems that we should learn from. We have a number of community members and capable organizations that can assist in envisioning alternatives. Once there's a plan that incorporates residents' concerns as well as options for providing shelter and support, it may be possible to engage the public as well as county government in participation. We can't even throw money at the problem until we define what we're trying to accomplish. I'd like to extend an invitation to to the city manager, the mayor, and the commissioners to breakfast at Central United Methodist. Breakfast is served Monday through Friday from 8:30 until 10:30. I began serving breakfast at Central United Methodist over a year ago. It's helped me to recognize that those experiencing homelessness are individuals with unique problems and capabilities. They are more than just homeless and are worthy of respect. There are many volunteers who've taken responsibility for addressing the needs of those less fortunate for many years. Let's join them by developing solutions to address this issue. Thank you.
Thank you for your thoughtful comments. We appreciate that. Is there any other public comment tonight? Okay, seeing none, I want to thank everyone. This is, I think, one of our longest meetings yet since this new commission's formed, and everybody, we've went through a lot, and I appreciate the work of this body tonight and every night. So thank you all, and with that, we'll be adjourned. Yeah. So,